A frontier governor gets home from an 8-month expedition into unmapped Africa. He hasn't even finished unpacking the donkeys when a royal courier catches up with him. It's a letter from the king himself. He's expecting praise, maybe even a promotion, but what he gets instead is a young boy losing his mind with excitement over one thing, and one thing only: a dancing performer that Harkhuf brought back from the south. The king's entire letter is basically one long, anxious instruction: don't let him fall into the river. This is a real letter, and it survives word for word, carved into solid rock on the wall of a tomb in southern Egypt, more than 4,000 years old. To understand why this letter exists, you need to understand the job that Harkhuf actually held. The area we know today as Aswan sat right next to Egypt's southern border, at the first cataract of the Nile, a natural wall of rocks and rapids that marked the edge of the navigable river and, more or less, the edge of Egypt itself. Whoever governed here wasn't just running a provincial town. He was Egypt's entire foreign office for everything south of that line. Harkhuf held the title Overseer of Foreigners. On paper, that meant he was the man Egypt sent when it wanted something from the lands beyond the border. Trade goods like incense, ebony, ivory, and exotic animal skins. But Egyptologist Toby Wilkinson makes a sharper case for what the job actually was in practice. Something closer to Egypt's chief of scouts. Harkhuf wasn't just running trade caravans. He was Egypt's eyes and ears on a border where the political situation was changing fast. And at least one of his missions, as we're about to see, reads much more like an intelligence gathering trip than a shopping run. Harkhuf had his biography carved onto the facade of his tomb at Qubbet el-Hawa, across the river from Aswan. And before the narrative even starts, the inscription piles up on his formal titles, over and over in different combinations. This was standard for an Old Kingdom official, and it's worth reading a stretch of it out loud just once to feel the weight of it. The governor, sole companion, lector priest, the one who is in the chamber, herdsman of Nekhen, chief of Nekeb, seal bearer of the king of Lower Egypt, sole companion, lector priest, overseer of foreigners, he who is in charge of all matters of the head of Upper Egypt, who is in the heart of his lord, Harkhuf, the seal bearer of the king of Lower Egypt, sole companion, lector priest, overseer of foreigners, he who brings the products of all foreign lands to his lord, who brings tribute to the royal ornament, overseer of all foreign lands of the head of Upper Egypt, who places the fear of Horus in the foreign lands, who does what his lord favors, seal bearer of the king of Lower Egypt, sole companion, lector priest, overseer of foreigners, the Imaku in the sight of Ptah Sokar, Harkhuf. Then, before the adventure story even starts, comes his own self-portrait. The ideal official statement he wanted every visitor to read first, including a curse to anyone who defiles his tomb. I am an excellent person, beloved of my father and favored of my mother, whom all his siblings always loved. I gave bread to the hungry, clothes to the naked, and I brought to the land him who had no boat. O you who live on earth, who shall come across this tomb of mine when traveling north or south, if you shall say, 1,000 of bread and 1,000 of beer for the owner of this tomb, then I shall watch over them in the necropolis. For I am an excellent and well-equipped Ankh, a lector priest who knows his spells. With regard to any man who shall enter this, my tomb, in an impure state, I shall seize his neck like a bird's, and he shall be judged for it by the great God. I am a speaker of perfection, and a repeater of what is desired. I never said anything evil to any great one against any man, because I wish my name to be perfect in the sight of the great God. I never judged between two parties in a case where a son was deprived of his father's inheritance. That's the standard formula for an Old Kingdom official's ideal portrait. Generous, moral, dutiful, and threatening anyone who should violate his eternal sanctuary. Now, before we get to that, let's put this into the context of the time, because it's easy to assume that the whole era of the Old Kingdom was just one unbroken stretch of stability, with great pyramids popping up everywhere, and trade with the outside world, with the best wine and wood coming from Canaan, and seemingly unlimited supplies of gold from Nubia. In reality, it wasn't quite that simple. Egypt's 6th dynasty had opened with Teti, whose reign followed a possible succession scare. Some Egyptologists argue for actual palace intrigue in these early years, though that's debated. Real stability came under his eventual successor, Pepy I, whose long reign allowed him to build temples across Egypt and carefully balance the power of provincial officials, the nomarchs, so that no single governor could grow too independent of what by then had become a highly bureaucratic and centralized state. Pepy I's son, Merenre, came next, but reigned only about 9 years before he died. That short reign is what opens the door for the child who followed him, Pepy II, who by tradition inherited the throne at around 6 years old, and then reigned for an extraordinary long time afterward, possibly the longest reign in recorded history, though modern scholars are skeptical of the exact number of years he sat on the throne. If we follow Egyptologist Ian Shaw's chronology, then he reigned for 94 years, meaning that Pepy II was close to 100 years old when he died. But back to Harkhuf. His first 3 expeditions all happened under King Merenre, who reigned from roughly 2287 to 2278 BC. During his reign, Egypt was still confident and capable enough to run trade expeditions deep into Africa and station officials on its southern frontier without any obvious signs of strain. However, Lower Nubia, just south of Egypt's Aswan border, had already broken free of Egyptian control back in the late 5th dynasty, and 6th dynasty sources, including Harkhuf's own reports, describe a confederation of Nubian chiefs forming in that same region. This is why Egyptologist Toby Wilkinson, who we mentioned earlier, believes that Harkhuf's repeated trips were really a way for Egypt to actively monitor the threat that this confederation may have posed. Speaking of interesting trips, I've teamed up with TrovaTrip to take a small group to Egypt this December, and I'd love for you to join me. We're going to be going to all of the major sites around Cairo and Luxor, including the Pyramids of Giza, the Sphinx, the Grand Egyptian Museum, Saqqara to see the Step Pyramid of Djoser, the Temple of Karnak, Luxor Temple, Gallivant around the Valley of the Kings, and much more. The next 3 people to sign up before September 3rd will get an early bird discount. Details in the video description, and I hope to see you there. Back to the video. So, Harkhuf's tomb records record 3 separate expeditions into a land called Yam, somewhere deep in Nubia to the south, and all of them sent by King Merenre. Scholars still argue about exactly where Yam was. One leading theory places it at the site of Kerma, near the Third Cataract, the capital of a highly complex and centralized Nubian state. Others push it much further south, near the Fifth Cataract. Treat any specific location on a modern map as an educated guess and not a settled fact. here's Harkhuf's account of all 3 trips, told back to back on the tomb facade. He speaks. The majesty of King Merenre, my lord, sent me together with my father, the sole companion, lector priest, Iri, to Yam to open up the way to this foreign land. I made the trip in 7 months, and I brought back all sorts of perfect and luxury items of tribute therefrom. I was favored very highly for it. His Majesty sent me a second time, only this time on my own. I took the Elephant Road, and I went out via Irchek, Mekher, Tereres, and Irchechej in the space of 8 months. I returned having brought great amounts of tribute from those foreign lands, the likes of which had never before been brought back to this land. I returned in the region of the house of the ruler of the lands of Setjau and Irchet, after having explored those foreign lands. I have not discovered that this was done by any companion and overseer of foreigners who went previously to Yam. His Majesty sent me a third time to Yam. I went out from the Thinite Nome upon the Oasis Road, and I found that the ruler of Yam had gone away to the land of the Tejemahu to drive them off to the western corner of the sky. I followed him to the land of the Tejemahu. I satisfied him just so that he might praise all the gods for the sovereign. The account continues on the other side of the entrance, picking up right where this leaves off. Then I sent an official with a man of Yam to the retinue of Horus, the royal court, to let the majesty of Merenre, my lord, know that I had gone to the land of the Tejemahu in pursuit of the ruler of Yam. When I had satisfied that ruler of Yam, I came down through, south of Irchet and north of Setjau, and I found the ruler who had united Irchet, Setjau, and Wawat. With 300 donkeys loaded with incense, ebony, heknu oil, shesat, panther skins, elephant tusks, throw sticks, and all sorts of wonderful products did I travel. When the ruler of Irchet, Setjau, and Wawat saw the strength and the number of the troop contingent of Yam, which was coming along with me to the residence, as well as my own expedition, which was traveling with me, this ruler then accompanied me, gave me cattle and goats, and led me on the hill paths of Irchet, due to the excellent manner in which I had exercised vigilance, more so than any companion or overseer of foreigners who had previously been sent to Yam. Reading between the lines, or hieroglyphs, it seems that this ruler who had united Irchet, Setjau, and Wawat may have intended some hostile action towards Harkhuf and his Egyptian party, but perhaps the presence of men from Yam convinced them not to attack and plunder the caravan. We don't know for sure what really happened. What we do know is that this may be the moment that Harkhuf comes face to face with local Nubian rulers, now coordinated and confident enough to surround an Egyptian expedition and dictate terms, even if, this time, they chose to be friendly rather than fight. The message given to Harkhuf from this encounter is clear. Egypt was no longer the only serious power in the Nile Valley. These 3 expeditions are the last that Harkhuf made for Merenre. Not long after that, the king died, and Egypt had a new ruler, a child. Harkhuf's next journey south would be his 4th, sent by a king who hadn't been born the last time he crossed this same border. As mentioned earlier, Pepy II came to the throne around 6 years old, after Merenre's short reign had ended. Modern scholars have questioned exactly how reliable that tradition is, but the letter we're about to examine genuinely reads like it was written for, if not necessarily entirely by, a young child. Harkhuf's 4th expedition to Yam, his first for this new king, brought back a special gift, a pygmy. Interestingly, all that we know about this trip comes secondhand, through the king's own reply letter, which Harkhuf was so proud of, he had the entire thing, dated, formal opening and all, copied word for word onto his tomb wall. It reads, "The king's own seal, year of the second occasion, third month of the Akhet season, day 15. A royal decree for the sole companion, lector priest, and overseer of foreigners, Harkhuf. Note has been taken of the content of this letter of yours, which you composed for the attention of the king at the palace, to let it be known that you have come back successfully from Yam with the expedition which was with you. What you have said in this letter of yours is that you have brought back all sorts of great and wonderful tribute which Hathor, mistress of Imau, has given to the Ka of the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, Neferkare. May he live forever and for eternity. What you have also said in this letter of yours is that you have brought back a pygmy who dances for the god from the land of the horizon dwellers, just like the pygmy which the seal-bearer of the god, Werjejedba, brought back from the land of Punt in the time of Isesi. What you have said to my majesty is that his like has never been brought back by another who did Yam before. How indeed you know how to do what your lord loves and praises, for you spend day and night thinking of how to do what your lord loves and praises. His majesty shall fulfill your many excellent wishes to benefit the son of your son for eternity, so that everyone who hears what my majesty has done for you shall say, was there ever the like of what was done for the sole companion, Harkhuf, when he came back from Yam, because of the concern he paid to doing what his lord loves, favors, and commands? Come north to the residence straight away, cast everything aside, bring with you this pygmy who is in your charge, whom you brought from the land of the horizon dwellers. May he live, prosper, and be healthy, so that he may dance for the god and gladden the delight of the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, Neferkare. May he live forever. When he goes down in your charge into the boat, station reliable people around him on deck, lest he fall in the water. When he sleeps at night, ensure that reliable people sleep around him in his quarters. Make inspection 10 times per night. My majesty wants to see this pygmy more than the tribute of Sinai or Punt. When you draw near to the residence, and this pygmy in your charge is alive, prosperous, and healthy, my majesty shall do great things for you, more than what was done for the seal-bearer in the time of Isesi, all because of the joy in the heart of my majesty at the sight of this pygmy." 10 inspections a night. More excited about this than actual tribute from Sinai and Punt, two of Egypt's most valuable trade partners. This isn't formal court language. It's more like a child who can't wait to open his presents on Christmas morning. And there's something almost poignant in how this document survives at all. Of Harkhuf's 4 journeys to Yam, this is the only one he doesn't tell in his own words. The most famous thing that ever happened to him is preserved only because someone else, a 6-year-old king, happened to write back. Interestingly, this wasn't the first time that a performer like this had been brought back to Egypt. Pepy II's own letter references an earlier precedent, a similar dancer brought back from Punt generations earlier during the reign of the 5th Dynasty king, Djedkare Isesi. So this was a known category of prized royal gift, not a complete one-off. And Harkhuf clearly understood what mattered most about this whole episode. Out of everything he could have carved onto his tomb facade forever, such as 4 grueling expeditions across 2 regions, hundreds of donkeys of incense and ivory, tense standoffs with foreign rulers, the thing he chose to preserve for eternity in the greatest detail of all was a child king's letter about a dancer's safety on a boat. 4,300 years later, it's still the most human document to survive from his career. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this, and stay tuned for more on the history of ancient Egypt. Thanks for watching. I'd also like to thank the channel's patrons for making videos like this possible. These include, but are certainly not limited to, Grandkek69, Yap de Graaf, Pasta Frola, Michael Lewis, Daniel Allen, Danny Van Eck, Wenix TV, Robert Morgan, Strobex, Blitzkrieg, Jeremiah, Krishnan Murali, Frank, Tim Lane, Sebastian Otaro Korea, Michael Trudell, Leader Titan, Micah G, Nathaniel Gosden, John Scarberry, William O'Brien, Julia Gire, Andrew Bolmer, Connor Dolson, Krish, Benven Reisvik, David R., Stephen Ball, Gabe, Monty Grimes, Franz Robbins, Cyrus Mir, Diane Astra, Nimrod Nir, Hypnosan, Brendan Redman, Faridun Dadachanji, Jimmy Daruwala, Anahida Debu, Gulistan Debu, Sherkam, Farhad Kama, and all of the channel's patrons on Patreon for helping to support this and all future content. Check out the benefits to being a Patreon member, and if you'd like to join, feel free to click the link in the video description. You can also follow History with Sai on Instagram, Facebook, and X, as well as continue to listen to special audio programs on the History with Sai podcast. Thanks again, and stay safe.